Good evening to each and every one of you. Just want to let you know the first question will be a 3-minute response. The subsequent 5 questions will be 2-minute response, and then we'll have a final closing question that will be 3 minutes in response. If you do call out one of the other candidates during one of your responses, that candidate that has been called out will have a 30-second opportunity to rebut anything that has been said. So with that being said, let's get started with our first question. Why should we care that you want to be the next lieutenant governor? Which of the several duties and roles of the lieutenant governor is the most important in your view? And what makes you a superior candidate in that particular duty or role? You, Candidate Ritter. Candidate Robinson, same question.
Well, first I'd like to say thank you for being here and thank you for having me here. But I would say the reason why I say people should care that I'm running for lieutenant governor is because I am everything that North Carolina represents. I am the common man. I am a person who came from very humble beginnings, and tonight I sit on this stage ready to make history here in North Carolina. That's why I would say people should care. The issue that I think that's most important to North Carolina, and in fact this nation right now that's most important, absolutely, as it comes to lieutenant governor, is education. We talk about education. I had the opportunity to talk to a gentleman the other day. He said, why should I care about education? Because I don't have any kids in school and I'm not in school. And I asked him, if you care about the Second Amendment, you should care about education, because our young people now don't appreciate our Second Amendment because they're not being taught our Constitution. If you care about our society as a whole, you should care about education, because currently in education we're indoctrinating our children and teaching them things that are contrary to our Judeo-Christian principles. So anybody in this society should care about education, because education is the root of all the evils that we see arising in this nation now. We haven't taught our children how dangerous communism and socialism is in our schools, and so they're falling into that trap. We're not teaching our children the skills they need to know to be able to have successful careers. So we're falling short of people in being able to fill jobs. So I would say that education is the #1 issue in this seat, in this position, because it has got to be turned around in this state. We have got to stop indoctrinating our children, and we've got to get back to educating our children. We talk about making victors and not victims. That's the #1 way we can do it, by teaching our young people that in this country, victors built this nation, not victims. And it all starts with education.
Thank you.
For our next question, we'll start with Mr. Robinson. We'll work it through so everybody will have a chance to go first, and everyone, as a result, will also have a chance to be last. So, as Lieutenant Governor, it's a separate, independent, elected office in North Carolina, one of 10 statewide executive branch offices. As the Lieutenant Governor mentioned, it's not widely understood, but you have to create something of an identity for yourself as Lieutenant Governor. These responses in 2 minutes list your top 3 priorities as Lieutenant Governor and what you will do specifically to get those accomplished in the office.
We'll set education aside for a minute because that's an actual duty. But as far as the agenda that I would like to push, the very first thing, folks, that I would like to do is to stand up for the lives of the unborn on the floor of that Senate. We have got to start standing up for the lives of the unborn in this state. We have got to make North Carolina a sanctuary state for the unborn. We see states becoming and cities becoming sanctuary cities for people who have come here illegally. We need to be a sanctuary state for the unborn and set that standard in this country. That's #1. Number two, we've got to stand up for our Second Amendment, folks, because without our Second Amendment, our Constitution will fall. And #3, we need to start standing up for our law enforcement officers and back them up as they do their job out on the streets and put their lives on the line. So those are the 3 agendas that I plan to push as Lieutenant Governor. Thank you.
Next question is a 2-minute question. We have all come to understand that one of the key roles, positions for the Lieutenant Governor of the great state of North Carolina is to be a member of the state school board. Let's talk specifically about some of the policies and the priorities that you would want to enact as a member of the state school board, but also let's talk about how do you see that relationship with the state superintendent of schools. And
Well, for me in education, it's not so much about the policy, it's about the persuasion. And here's what the persuasion that I want to do when I go into the lieutenant governor's office. I want to ask the state school board, not ask the state school board, I want to demand the state school board that our schools stop indoctrinating our children, period. You've got to stop it. Stop indoctrinating our children and just teach them. Just teach them, that's it. Stop forcing Marxism and communism down their throats and just teach them. Stop teaching them about gender fluidity and stop presenting pornographic so-called sexual education to them and just teach them. Teach them reading, writing, and arithmetic and just teach them. Stop indoctrinating them and just teach them. That is exactly what I want to do on the state school board. I want to make them just teach our children and stop indoctrinating them.
Economic development is an important issue for the state of North Carolina. We're increasingly in competition in a global economy. We've been cited by many publications over the last several years as a desired destination for businesses. As Lieutenant Governor, for all of the candidates here, what will be your priorities in terms of keeping North Carolina competitive in this global economy that we'll face in the coming decades?
Economic development and growth and job retention is something that's close to me because, folks, I've lost 2 jobs, 2 very good manufacturing jobs in NAFTA. I know what it's like to watch people lose their livelihood because of bad federal policy, so I know what that's like. But I think the most important thing as Lieutenant Governor that I can do, stand behind the legislature as they continue to use solid conservative economic principles to build economic growth through drawing in the private sector with tax cuts, corporate tax cuts, and personal income tax cuts. Those things draw business in for the long term. That's what we need. The second thing, of course, is being on that state school board. And again, folks, it all starts with education. We can bring in all the companies we want, but if we don't have people to fill the jobs, they're not going to stay. We need a solid, educated workforce, and it starts, folks, not in the 12th grade. It starts at grade 1 with teaching these kids how to read, how to write, how to do arithmetic, and then further on to teach them how to gain skills that are going to bring them into these jobs and fill these jobs and keep them here for many years to come. So those are the 2 things that I would focus on as Lieutenant Governor. Standing behind the legislature as they continue to push those strong economic policies and standing up for our children by ending indoctrination and getting back to education.
In the audience tonight is my former brigade commander, Colonel Denny R. Lewis, and also my former brigade executive officer, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Powers. We all came in together. I was the brigade operations officer, brand new. One of the important things about the cycle of a unit or an organization is a smooth continuum of leadership. So my question to you is, give us an idea about your philosophy of leadership. And then also, what are the current policy positions of the Lieutenant Governor Forrest that you will seek to improve and sustain?
Well, first off, let me say this. The very first thing we need to realize as elected officials is this: we're not leaders. We're not leaders. We're supposed to be servants. That's what the Founding Fathers intended. They did not intend us to be leaders. They intended us to be servants to the people, and that's what I want to be if I'm elected to be Lieutenant Governor. I want to be able to live out that creed that we learned in the Army, to not do anything that you aren't willing to do for the people that you're serving, to take the arrows, to take the hits, to take the fight, take it on yourself. That's what being a servant means. Not a leader, a servant. Because that's what elected officials are supposed to be in this nation. They're supposed to be servants, first and foremost. And as far as carrying on what Dan Forrest is doing as Lieutenant Governor, I think the best thing that I can do is to step in that office and continue what he started as being a pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, pro-constitutional, principled conservative. That's the best thing I can do.
All right, this is the second to last question, but before we get to that, I want to take a moment of personal privilege and say What an honor it's been to share the stage with you, Lieutenant Colonel, a true patriot and leader. Thank you, sir. Pleasure. One of the duties that the Lieutenant Governor currently holds, Dan Forrest, is the chair of the Energy Policy Council. And so as Lieutenant Governor, what will be your priorities in terms of leading North Carolina, in terms of the necessary energy generation that we'll need for the economy of the 21st century, for manufacturing, for our homes, for our families? What will be the necessary policies to make sure North Carolina has energy for its future?
Well, the very first thing I would do is I would surround myself with some very good, strong, conservative energy experts. That would be number one. That would be the number one thing I would do, and I would do that because of this. If we're gonna have success in energy and industry in this state and in this country, what we're gonna have to do is protect ourselves against the globalist climate change cabal. We have got to keep them out of this state. We can do everything that we've said on this stage tonight about energy that we want to, but if we have these globalist climate change people stifling us at every turn and stopping industry and stopping our attempts to build our energy infrastructure, it's not going to work. So as Lieutenant Governor, that would be one of the things I would focus on most when it comes to energy, is keeping the climate change cabal out of this state, and if they are in this state, keeping them in chains.
This is the final question. It will serve as your summation, and it will be 3 minutes allocated to each and every one of you. On January of next year, 2021, you will find yourself as the Lieutenant Governor, and Dan Forrest is the governor. However, not soon after he takes the oath of office, the governor will have to leave office. Explain to the people here why you will be ready to step in to be the governor of the great state of North Carolina.
Well, for me, folks, it's simple. I don't want to sound arrogant, but I have a deep sense of confidence in myself. And I have a deep sense of confidence in myself because I have an overwhelming faith in my Creator. I have an overwhelming and abiding faith in God. And if it was in His plan for me to have to step into the seat of the governor, I have no doubt that He would be right there guiding my hand and guiding my tongue and helping me to carry out that duty. So I don't fear that day if it should come, because I know He'd be with me. And why do I know that? I know it because of the things that I've seen in life. I know what it's like, folks, to stand in the kitchen and open the cabinet and there's nothing in there to eat. I know what it's like to watch your mom crying as she's watching you ride off to go serve the country. Folks, I know what it's like to lose a job that you desperately needed to take care of your family, to watch that job be washed away, but to still stand strong on faith. And I know that a lot of people here in North Carolina know those things too. And because I know those things, folks, I just don't understand North Carolina. I am North Carolina. I'm in it in all of its forms. I love this state, and if I was put in a position to lead this state, I have no doubt that I could do it. With God as the wings the wind underneath my wings and the wisdom in my head, I know that I could lead this state, folks. So I have no doubt. So if I was put in that position, absolutely, I'd be ready to meet that challenge.
Ladies and gentlemen, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you for having me here back in the great state of North Carolina to participate in this Lieutenant Governor Forum. Let me leave you with a couple of thoughts before we close this out. It was Plato who once said, one of the penalties for refusing to participate in politics is that you shall be governed by your inferiors. This is the reason why we are sitting here right now, why some 3,000 paratroopers were on green ramp and boarding airplanes, so that we can have this democracy, that we can have this freedom, that we can have this liberty. You have to participate in it. You have to be all in. You have to understand that your responsibilities as a citizen in the greatest nation that the world has ever known, the constitutional republic that we call home, these great United States of America, and then this great state of North Carolina. God bless you all. God bless North Carolina. And go out and make a difference for this state and for this country. Thank you so much.